Okay, we're back again. This time with something a little more recent. This was the 2018 CASC club racing event at Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. This time in my Honda Civic. This was originally built for CTCC, Canadian Touring Car Championship touring regulations. Based upon lap times and all that, it fits into the T4, GT4 ranks of CASC club racing. We didn't qualify for whatever reason, seemed to like not doing that. So we're at the very back here. You get a rocket start behind a few other in-class cars here, but then for some reason just lift out of it. A bit chaotic going into one, but we take our time and go around on the outside of the little Suzuki here. The car we're going to chase for a lot of the video is that white Integra up there. He was also at the back with us and seemed to have some good pace. Kind of make short work of these guys. Mosport's an amazing track, even in a car like this that isn't the fastest car in the world. It's still a very scary experience a lot of times, but it's easily my favorite track, and it also happens to be my home track, so I guess I'm slightly biased, but we can see us working up our way through traffic here, the Integra and I, slowly picking out the slower cars, making our way towards the front. Taking a few chances in traffic, but he's making his moves well known, so I have no problem following him through. We were down a little bit on straightaway speed, but as per usual, I make up all my speed and lap time in the corners and under braking. This isn't the full race. We had a fuel pump fail basically probably 3/4 into the race, and this is basically just recording up until then because it just gets depressing after that point as we make our way into the lead of in-class and T4, GT4 too, and end up falling behind all the people we had just passed because the fuel pump basically puts the car into limp mode and we effectively have no power and the engine doesn't rev as well as it should be. This is a passenger position here in this Mini. So you can see this weekend was during the celebration weekend in 2018 at Mosport, so it was a pretty well populated event. A good amount of cars in the GT4 and T4 classes. Variety of different drivers and cars, but it was a fairly competitive little field. I should point out I'm running on probably about 4-year-old dry rotted Continental slicks that are well past their best before date, if you will. But we're still keeping up with the cars that are on significantly better Pirelli slicks. These are my basically leftovers from when I was racing a Canadian touring car a few years prior. So they're quite old, but they still do the job, and I tend to let my driving do the talking over the equipment, as you can see here. So coming out of Mosport behind this other Civic here, an older generation EK Civic, and thought he was going to pull us, but then we ended up getting right up behind him and stick with him in the draft. But you can see he just has a little bit more top end than us, but we're thinking about setting up a pass possibly into 8, but it looks like we're going to get that done pretty easily. Pop to the inside and 8, sailing by on the inside, and move on to the next car in class. A little bit of a loose moment there, but just another typical day in a front-wheel drive car with a pretty lively rear end. You can see up here we're catching that Integra from earlier, as well as this Mazda MX-5 Cup car that's in our class. We actually had a right front damper failing. That's why the car was bouncing a lot through there in turn 10. As you can see, it was pogoing quite a lot. I was able to drive around it, but the car was less than ideal to drive because of this. But we still managed to, I'd say, more than hold our own. Thinking about having a look on the Cup car here going into 2, but it's a pretty ballsy pass on most days. So he defends to the inside, which is fine, but that compromises his exit, and I'm going to get a better exit. And we had a little more power than he did. It's not that I can say that, but basically made that pretty easy. Just set up our exit better and then had him before we went into 4. The Integra's just up ahead. You can see that despite his pretty good start, we're starting to reel him back in as we've found some pace and found some confidence in the car. You see it starting to pogo a lot more in 5B onto the backstretch again. not the most power, but we have enough to hold our own. As we start to get more towards the front with some of the faster cars, they make up a lot of their time on the backstretch. So you'll notice that we make up a lot of our time under braking, and their closing speeds are that much greater, and our mid-corner speed is that much greater than they are. Which is slightly frustrating for anybody that's ever been in a position similar to that you basically drive the car to within an inch of its life, but then lose it all going down the straightaway. Sounds like an excuse, but as you can see here, we reeled him right back in, despite him pulling us on the straightaway. It was a nice set of corners there that we went through. I linked it all together pretty well, and starting to find some rhythm in the car now. The tires are starting to come up to temperature, and despite being old, crappy tires, I think we're holding our own here. As mentioned, Mosport is my favorite track. Don't have the most laps around here, but I've driven it enough that I've got a pretty comfortable feeling on driving around here, which is not to be mistaken for a lack of respect of this place, but as you can see, a fairly nice pass under braking there. I don't know if he had a problem or not, but made fairly short work of it. So I believe that's the leaders in class up ahead fighting for first. So this should put us third in T4/GT4. You can see they're holding each other up pretty dramatically, but that's okay. We're gonna catch them, because while they're fighting, it allows us to gain some time on them, because we're on our own in their track and just kind of watching them battle. So at the moment, we got the best seat in the house. Got a lot more straightaway speed than we do, but that's okay. We're gonna catch them eventually and have a fight for the win. Basically, this is our first time back to racing in almost 2 years. This race was the second race we did in the year, but we'd been out of racing for almost 2 years at that point. We had blown a motor in testing, our primary race motor, if you will, and we basically just acquired this $900 junkyard engine with minimal modifications done to it, just basically your bolt-ons, and it's actually put out more power than our race engine did, so it's a pretty sweet little engine. So despite having a fuel pump failure, it more than held its own for the first kind of 20 minutes here. It was only really the last few laps that the fuel pump failure occurred, which was kind of a shame, because we basically took their lunch money and there was no looking back. So this is the Integra of Ian Law. Ian's known pretty well in Ontario racing circles is for his car control schools and that sort of thing. He was struggling a bit as far as car setup, but you see just a little security tap of the brakes there. I'm thinking of having to look into 5A, but it's not really worth it. He's just got to rocket right back by me on the straightaway. So as you can see, even in the draft, this thing just takes off like a batter to hell. Trying our best to keep up with them, but we're going to make up all our time under braking in 8, so I'm not overly worried about it. Just going to kind of hang out here and make up what speed we can in the draft and hope that we can catch him. We were a little more dialed in than what he was, but as you can see, closing up pretty dramatically here in the last set of corners coming into 9. He had a little security tap. He's off his apex quite a lot. I'm going to get a really good run and kind of tap him here. I actually didn't mean to, but it should look pretty exciting for all the people on the pit wall, I'm sure. So now he's defending a bit, because he definitely knows I'm here now. Coming into 1, thinking around the outside, which is not the greatest idea, but he doesn't know that, so I'm going to make him think that. He's basically driving in his mirrors now, but that's okay. Takes a bit of a shallow line, misses his apex by quite a lot. I like a later turn in there, gets a better run off the corner. As you can see, despite his power advantage, I can basically pull him coming out of the corner, but then once the little motor comes on song, he's kind of gone. Holding me up slightly here, but he's by no obligation to let me by. Probably could have had a couple more aggressive moves, but being kind of the last race of the season, or the first race, I should say. This is the first race of the 2019 season. So being the first race, it was kind of early days, so there was no point to making enemies when you didn't need to, especially because we weren't in the full season of this championship. We were kind of just using it as a shakedown before we ran the Super Production Series in Quebec. This is just used just to get some extra track time, and anytime you can drive on Mosport is always a good day. So again, closing in 10 pretty dramatically. Been stuck behind him for quite a few laps now, but no real place to pass. Mosport's notoriously hard to pass on, despite being a legendary circuit. It's very, very hard to pass on. Requires a lot of commitment. As you can see, we've got a good run coming out of 1 here, so I'm thinking about a look at the inside, but nope, I'm not going to try that this time. Although we close up pretty dramatically under braking. Thinking of a look into 3, but he sees that coming and defends it pretty well. So, brake here. Again, he's off his apex. As a result, I'm off my apex as well, but still find a way to get a better exit, but his power is going to take over once again. So now we're coming into 5. This should be right around the time the fuel pump begins to show signs of failing. Thinking about a look on the inside of 5A, but can't quite get it done. Better exit out of 5B, but his power's going to take over once again, and at this point the fuel pump is starting to fail, so the car is effectively putting itself into a sort of limp mode. As you can see, it just slowly starts to drop power here. Passing the slower class car. But yeah, then Integra's caught back up to us, so we've basically got nothing in the straightaways now. So it's basically just a matter of holding on and surviving. We didn't end up finishing this race. I wasn't sure at the time what the issue was, so I ended up parking the car just in case there was something else going on. Found out afterwards that it was indeed the fuel pump, because as soon as it was replaced, the car was back on song. But at the time, we were just still testing out some issues, still working out some kinks. So it was probably the smarter decision to park the car rather than carry on in case it was a bigger issue. But the fuel pump ended up fixing it, so we didn't get it fixed for this weekend, but the weekend after we got it fixed and carried on into the 2019 Super Production Challenge season. So the rest of this is just basically me parading around trying to get a finish before ultimately retiring. But there's not much exciting left to see, so this should probably wrap it up for now. As I said in the last video, I'm going to try and post some more interesting content in the coming weeks as far as some highlights from this past season, and then hopefully gearing up for the 2020 season as well as into the 2020 season, some onboards and other kind of cool stuff like that. So stay tuned and hope you enjoyed.